Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Epic Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Dave England. You've heard that the grass is greener on the other side. You're not quite sure whether you want to believe it's true or not. I'm here to tell you, in reality, it's actually true. What I mean by that isn't necessarily that opportunity is going to be better if you choose to leave your dealership and go somewhere else, but I can assure you that once you make a change, your mind, your mental perspective on things, the way that you're looking at things is going to be completely different. First and foremost, the biggest takeaway is going to be if you're in a situation where you just don't feel like everything's working well for you, whether it's your environment or the amount of money you're making, if you end up leaving to go to another dealership, you're going to find that you're the newest person in the building, that nobody knows who you are, and that you're going to have to start from the beginning and prove yourself, which is going to give you more energy. It's going to make you more competitive. You're going to fight harder to be able to make deals and prove that they made a good decision in hiring you. That in itself will make it feel like the grass is greener in that location. But the biggest problem that you have is once you make a decision to do that, you're saying not only I'm leaving the dealership that I've been at, I'm leaving the small paycheck, but you're also saying every car that I've sold to a customer, I'm leaving that customer behind and I'm going to go to a different dealership and I'm going to start all over again. And if you're working at a Ford dealership and you go to another Ford dealership in the same town, you may think that your customer is going to follow you. But a lot of times what happens is because they're creatures of habit and they could have bought cars from that dealership before you were even a salesperson there, there's a strong chance that they're going to continue to do business at that dealership, especially if that's where they service their vehicle. So in your mind, just going across town, it's 20 minutes away, it's 30 minutes away, your customer's going to follow you. A lot of times that's not what happens. And when you call them and you're from another dealership, they're not really happy that you made the move. They're kind of upset that you left them to go somewhere else because of some selfish motivation, whatever that happens to be, because your customer's happy doing business with the store that you left. So it's very easy to make a decision to leave and actually find that once you've left, the grass is greener. You have people that say the grass isn't greener because when they leave, they go to a situation that's not as good or worse than the one that they left. But in most instances, it's because they carried that negativity with them to the next place. So, as Albert Einstein has said, if you continue to do the same thing over and over again, but expect a different result, that's called insanity. And the reality is, if you go to another dealership and you do the same thing over and over again, but you expect it's going to be different, that's going to be insanity. So, I find that some people, when they go somewhere else, they feel like it's great, but then eventually things settle down and they end up regretting that they made the move because their energy level, their enthusiasm, their bad habits creep in, and then all of a sudden it's just like it was before. Instead of making a decision to make the leap to go somewhere else, especially if you know people that are there and they're trying to bring you over, there's an expression that misery loves company. And a lot of times what happens is someone left to go somewhere else. It's not really any better than the place that they left, but because they're not super happy, they feel like it'd be much better if people that they knew came to work for them. They're doing it for selfish motivations. They don't necessarily care whether you're going to do better or not. And almost every time I've seen this happen, the second person that leaves to follow their buddy to go to the other store regrets it and ends up going back to the same dealership. So be very careful when you decide that this is something that you want to do. And if you feel like you have no other options and it's what you have to do, then I encourage you to do whatever you feel is right for you individually. But at the same time, keep in mind, if you were to assess what's going on and take a look and decide that if you were to change some things, in particular, your perspective on what's going on, you might find that the situation you're in isn't as bad as it felt like because you're the one that decided to make the change. And most recently, there's been a post in a Facebook group where somebody's talking about they're having a bad relationship with their sales manager, and it's to a point where they basically hate each other. So they ask a question in this Facebook group, should I leave and go to another dealership? Most of the answers that they got back from people in the group were, hey, that's a bad situation. I've been there before. You're just going to have to leave, make the move, go do what you want. But no one really keeps in mind that when that salesperson leaves, they're abandoning their customers, and most likely their customers are going to stay at the dealership where they were at and not follow them to the next dealership. So it's going to be even harder as they move forward to build upon what they started, because they're going to have to start completely from scratch. So my suggestion was to sit down and have a conversation with that sales manager. But before they have that conversation, to look around and see, are they the only person that has this negative relationship with that sales manager? And what I mean by that is, if you have 20 salespeople in your dealership and 19 of them are happy working with that sales manager, and you're the only one that has this bad relationship, then definitely it may have something to do with you, or a misunderstanding or a perception that that manager has about you, that having a conversation with them might be able to turn things around. If they hate all 20 salespeople in the dealership and they just have a bad attitude and they're not going to go anywhere unless they get fired, then at that point you're going to have to decide whether that's an environment that you want to be in. But with the turnover that's in this business, at some point, negative people typically tend to find their way to the door, whether it's their choice or they're forced. And then you're leaving and abandoning a position early. You're leaving your customers behind, when the reality is, had you just stayed and, stuck it out for another 30 days or 60 days, that problem would have gone away, and then you can go back to having a positive environment and continue to grow your career. So I'm not saying that happens all the time, and I understand being in a bad environment isn't necessarily going to make you feel good, but at the same time, keep in mind, it's not just a decision about how you feel or how much money you're making. It's really, you're in a position where you've worked hard to establish a customer base, and you're going to walk away from that customer base. Or you're at a dealership that's a premier dealership. They have more inventory than anybody else. Their pricing tends to be a little bit more aggressive than anybody else. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to sell more cars to more people because you have more inventory, or you have a very competitive price. And you're going to lose opportunities to generate business, and you're going to go somewhere else where maybe they don't have the same inventory. So you're going to get super frustrated when you get leads in on vehicles, or customers that walk in through the front door and want cars that you don't have. And then you're going to hear them tell you, well, I'm going to go to this other dealership because I know that they have the car. And it turns out that's the dealership that you left. So it's very hard to maintain a positive attitude when things like that happen. Again, keep in mind that I understand being in a bad situation or working with people that you're not in a positive relationship with will affect things, but think about it more long term if this is something that you want to do. Be very careful about that. Talk to other people. Make sure that you're dealing with people that you respect, that aren't necessarily going to lead you to make a decision that isn't in the best interest of you. Have somebody that's fairly impartial, maybe even somebody that's not in the business, that you're able to talk to and get some advice from that. It's a tough business. There's a lot of hours. It's very competitive. There's a lot of things that happen that we're not happy about, that seem unfair. Unfortunately, in this business, a lot of that comes with being in it. But the positives are you have a lot of freedom in what you do. You have the ability to make a bunch of money. You're not limited to working certain hours and certain days. Most dealerships have open floors where you can come in, and as much effort and time as you want to put in, you have an opportunity to get the reward. You have other people that might be able to mentor you. So in essence, you're getting free training. You don't have to pay for your inventory. You don't have to pay for your advertising. You don't have to pay for your phone or computer. These are all provided for you, and you're able to come in and just work almost independently. That's something that doesn't happen in very many other situations other than being a salesperson at a dealership. So I would just encourage you, again, do the best you can to find a way to try to work through some of these things. Get good advice that definitely has you in mind, and not just your buddy that says it's time to go and so follow me, or let's go somewhere else, or they've already made the move and they try to get you to move with them only to find out it's a bad situation. Just think it through and decide whether maybe sticking through it is going to be different, because in the end, sometimes, especially with the market being the way it is right now, where manufacturers are flooding dealerships with a bunch of inventory, pricing's getting very aggressive. Customers understand that it's a buyer's market right now. Your frustrations might just be because some things aren't happening the way you'd like them to, or the way that they used to. don't take it out on your dealership, your environment, your manufacturer. Take a look at some of the things you're doing, and in particular, what your attitude is. And if you approach things differently, you might find a different result. And most of the times, when people are making money, no matter what's going on, they're fairly happy with their situation. It's when they're not making money or they're not making sales that's going to be the problem.